experience where two have truly become one. God is at the center of us, our purpose and vision in His love. We dedicate our today, tomorrow, and always to You, our King. Bless and let there be love in our home. The marriage experience ordained by You alone. The marriage experience. The marriage experience ordained by You alone.
Welcome to the Marriage Experience program with Ayo Kunle and Boston A. Santos, where they explore what it means to cultivate a God-centric marriage, delivering realistic biblical wisdom, pointers, and insights from couples and individuals on the marriage journey. Join them today as they share some insights.
Welcome to this week's episode of the Marriage Experience program. And as is our custom, to say it's our delight and honor to be partnering with you to build a godly and thriving marriage.
Yes, welcome to this week's episode, and we're so glad that you're giving us the delight. It is a delight to contribute to the success of your marriages. So today we'll be starting conversations around another major topic, and that's offense. That's of course offense in marriage. Now we'll try approaching it as always from different angles. We're going to look at what offense is. We're going to look at how the Bible describes what offense is and what the Bible has to say about it. Not just what it says, but what kind of solutions the Bible proffers. We'll be looking at what causes it as well in our marriages and in our private lives as well. We'll also look at how to resolve and of course how to avoid offense. Of course, the usual saying that goes, prevention is better than cure. So it's always good to know how to prevent offense. Of course, if it does happen, then we have to know how to handle it.
Yeah, so the Webster Dictionary, we like to use the Webster Dictionary when we're looking at definitions. It defines offense in a number of ways, but we've taken out these particular ones we're going to be sharing. And the first is that it's the act of displeasing or affronting, because these definitions that we're sharing are the ones that are relevant to what to the kind of offense we're talking about. And it's the state of being insulted or morally outraged. And it's also a deliberately offensive act or something producing the effect of deliberate disrespect. In other words, offense is an annoying or resentment brought about by a perceived insult.
And I like that word, perceive. It doesn't have to be something that's obvious.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's a perceived insult to or disregard for one's person. Now, a perceived insult can also be qualified as being offensive because it does not focus on the intention of the one who does the deed, but rather on how the person who receives the deed perceives the deed. Have I confused you enough? So anyway, offense, intended or not, causes displeasure to the offended. And they feel offended, disrespected, and insulted at the affront they felt from their spouse, since we're talking about marriage. And the action they considered offensive alters their emotion to varying degrees. It could be from sulking to a full-blown outrage. Now, without demeaning or disregarding the feelings of the offended, you notice that I'm choosing my words here because the offense may not have been deliberate. It doesn't remove, though, from the fact that the offended did take offense.
Yeah, one of the examples or analogies I tend to use when we're talking about issues like this
what was deliberate
is,
or not, right?
yeah, is a difference between murder and manslaughter, or whatever way legal is defined in different jurisdictions. Basically, one was an intended act of killing another human being, preconceived, and the other could result from carelessness, recklessness, or even negligence. Now, there's the preconceived and, deliberate act of killing, and the others is not. Now, it doesn't matter what the situation was before. The bottom line is that the victim eventually died,
Yeah.
and that pain remains the same. There's no way of lessening that pain because the person is dead, whether or not there was the intention. So when we're talking about disrespect or offense or such kind of things, though these actions may not have been intended, the consequence remains largely the same. Now, one appropriate quote we found now, which points to offense being part of the growth process in marriage, says, growth is a process. You gain, you lose, you cry, you grow, you learn, you try, you fail, but you keep trying.
I mean, it's a cycle.
It's a cycle,
Yeah.
Where, one might say, well, you're going forward and going backwards, taking a step forward and taking another step backwards. No, I mean, if one sees it as that step which appears to be taken backwards is also a learning process.
Yes, absolutely.
Remember, you don't only learn when you gain knowledge. You also learn when you lose, the effect of not having knowledge.
I mean, one thing that is said, usually people would say experience is the best teacher, but it's not so much the experience, but what we learned in terms of when we go to review what happened, when we think back, when we sit back to reflect on what happened. So what exactly did we take out of why that thing happened, or what caused that thing to happen? Well, that's the same thing, to happen in the first place. So it's actually the information we get from that reflection that is actually what the teacher is in this kind of a process that we're talking about.
Yeah. So what is so true? It is how we handle offense in marriage that matters. Fine. Remember a few moments ago we talked about the best ways to avoid it if you can. But the most important thing is, how do we handle offense when it comes up in marriage? Offense is it's an inevitable consequence of two people who
A relationship.
who are in a relationship, who are from distinct backgrounds, personalities, and different experiences. And now these two people have come together and have to work together. So offense is something that is a consequence. Now, they obviously don't know everything about each other, and that'll take their whole lifetime and some, to learning everything. Now, if you think about it, remember, we all go through life. We all have experiences. And these experiences tend to vary our thought patterns. It tends to vary our levels of maturity. It tends to vary our perceptions to life. It tends to vary what our standards are, and so on. So if we believe, say you get married today, and within the next 6 months you're able to learn and understand your spouse fully. I mean, unless you pluck your spouse and take him or her to Mars and just store them there, for the next 30 years, there would always be changes in one's understanding, maturity, etc. And you have to keep relearning. We are always work in progress. And that means that those who we engage with, we will always have something new to learn about us, and we also have something new to learn about them. And this reminds me of what my dad-in-law told me shortly after we got married. He asked me a question about something, when we were going to do something, and I said, "Okay, we'll sort it out when we settle down." And then he laughed, and I wondered why he laughed. And he said, "Well, they'd been married for over 30 years, and they were still settling down." And I thought, what's this man talking about? I mean, if you're married for 30 years, you would have got everything sorted out, and you'd have been settling down. No, what we have discovered, and which for those of you who've been married for quite a while, is that this goalpost, if I may use that term, keeps getting wider and narrower, and keeps shifting. Life keeps changing, and we have to continue to make changes in the way we learn and understand each other. What he was telling me then was that marriage is a lifetime of learning about each other and then making adjustments, constant adjustments to accommodate each other, and then relearning that person that has evolved during that process of learning. So, what are we saying? You're learning every day, but then what you're trying to understand is also changing. So it's a moving target. Now that's not a bad thing. That's actually a good thing, because it keeps one on one's toe to learn more and to get to understand your spouse better.
And just to keep on, making the necessary
Adjustments,
adjustments to accommodate each other, and just to get better at dealing with each other.
The marriage
You're listening to the Marriage Experience program with Ayo Kunle and Bossa Santos.
So another quote we found says, "When two people are meant for each other, no time is too long, no distance is too far, no uproar can ever tear them apart." Meaning, no amount or degree of offense can be strong enough to destroy a marriage founded on a solid foundation.
Sorry, I just the version. I just remembered that song. Was it Diana Ross?
Ain't no
Mountain
mountain high
High
enough.
Enough?
Interesting. So remember, one of the first quotes that we shared on this program, it says, "A good marriage requires time. It requires effort, and you have to work at it. You have to cultivate it. You have to forgive and forget, and you have to be absolutely loyal one to another." No marriage exists without its challenges. Again, it's how you handle things that matter, and it's best not to sweep things under the carpet. Otherwise, you keep mounting up, the hurt, and eventually, like a keg of gunpowder, one day it's just going to explode. And it's better to also handle the offense situation as quickly as possible, so that things don't get out of hands, as quickly and as effectively as possible. Now, the podcaster of the Naked Marriage podcast said, "A marriage doesn't fall apart because you married the wrong person, but when you start to treat your spouse like they are the wrong person, then that marriage is on its way to breaking down."
That's very interesting, because often I hear people ask for my opinion, especially when it comes to the thought that many people have that, there's one person for each person in the world. Well, and I say, well, if that person, you live in the United States and that person is in Papua New Guinea or something, that means you'd never ever meet that person in life.
I mean, marriage is about two people who have consented to a particular purpose and have made up their minds that they're going to work at it, and they're going to keep on moving towards this purpose that is before them.
And that another question that comes up to mind just now is, well, I think I've been asked a couple of times that, well, what if truly I actually married the wrong person for the wrong reasons? Got married because she was pregnant, or I got married because my parents wanted me to marry my partner, and I go, okay, well, I'm married for the wrong reasons. What do we then do? Is it possible to patch things up and develop a liking for each other? at the end of the day, there's no one size fits all answer to that.
I mean, I'm an eternal optimist, and I just believe that as long as two people are willing to work at their marriage, regardless of how it started off, they can make good of it. That's my optimistic opinion. I may be wrong, but that's just the way I see it. And, in case of offense, one question that is always pertinent to ask is what's worth fighting over or for? What I'm trying to say is that are you going to fight over the cause of the offense, or are you going to fight to save your marriage? Which is worth fighting for?
That's that's a deep question. Research in psychology points to the feeling of offense being triggered by a blow to one's honor. Hence their public face, because it's like an affront, and that's why it affects people so much. Yet this painful emotion, besides scarring the reputation and self-view of the offended person, they also often feel it in interpersonal relationships, which, if not dealt with properly, may finally result in a breakup. Psychologists say the feeling of offense belongs to the so-called self-conscious emotions like shame, like guilt, and pride, and like shame and humiliation. The perceived blow to one's personal image and self-image causes the offense.
So what you're saying in essence is that the person feels offense because, to put it this way, that a nerve was touched.
That nerve that makes them feel
shame or
smaller. That nerve that doesn't encourage their self-perception of
their self-worth.
their self-worth. Yes. They say offense develops through three stages. First, one, the offended person pinpoints the cause of the offense and then works to develop some sort of interpretation.
Let's say a spouse does something to the other spouse.
Yeah.
So the spouse who is processing or beginning to go into offense may take it as, oh, what my spouse just did, this is what it means. That doesn't necessarily mean that is what the other spouse meant. Or
and that's
was even trying to do. But because of the underlying issues, the underlying limiting beliefs, so to speak, of one spouse, then they process that action or the words through a certain filter. And that is what now actually brings the offense.
Absolutely. Now, the second stage is that the offended person attempts to determine the intensity of the feeling of the offense, which is based on one's belief of self and whether that offender holds the same beliefs. In other words, look, this is what I believe, this is who I believe I am, these are my values, and then I've now come across somebody who doesn't believe in those values and probably has brought a new set of values or beliefs, and that tends to be seen as an affront on one's self-worth or how one sees oneself. Finally, the offended person has some sort of reaction to the offense based on several factors. Notice that a person who has already chosen to take offense, when they begin to go through these phases, is the same person that seems to get affected the most. Because when this process starts, remember, it starts off with
the perception.
And if we look beyond how we perceive what the person is trying to say, then that process of going through the perception, being offended, where one's belief and self-worth and etc. are being challenged, and then of course finally into full-blown offense. So what we're saying here is offense is a choice. Offense is a choice. Seeing the sin is one takes offense. We have a choice
To take it or leave
to
it.
take it or to leave it.
Yeah.
Of course, it's easier to take it because that's what our natural inclination will be towards. But then we have to deliberately ensure that when these things come up, because we've prepared, we've learned about it, we understand what our triggers are, and so on and so forth. So we make sure that we do not end up in that situation where we can get triggered to feel offense.
And of course, that's why, in previous episodes, you may want to go back to listen to those where we talked about understanding what the triggers are for your spouse and what makes them behave the way that they do, or what makes them, reason the way that they reason. So the next question to ask is, what sort of emotions do the feeling of offense in relationships commonly trigger? And one of the most common is insecurity. Now, insecurities are based on one's self-concept, the ideas and feelings about themselves. And when something challenges, like we just said, when something challenges that self-concept, the person will question perceptions of self, and insecurities inevitably will happen.
Yes.
Now, the goal becomes now trying to rectify the words spoken or the actions taken with that self-concept.
Trying to reconcile.
Yeah, you're trying to reconcile whether, is this person really belittling me, or is this who I am? So that there's that conflict that goes on in the person's head. And if the correction doesn't actually take place, then the feelings of offense is just going to happen anyway. And the disparity between one self-concept and someone else's words or actions can actually be corrected, but not only by just accepting what they say, but also with a strong identity and self-concept. That's why it's important for you. Remember, if you remember our previous episodes, where we said that you cannot find your value in somebody else. Your value must always be founded on God. And so when you know who God calls you, when you're sure of yourself in God, we struggle every now and again, but we have to ensure that our minds are thinking on who God says we are. That's one of the reasons why Paul would say, these are the things that you think on, whatsoever things are true, pure, lovely, just, honest, of good report, things of excellence, things of virtue, things that are praiseworthy. So when we hear those things, those words, or we see those actions, then once we hide all of these things behind the truth of who God says we are, then offense, we can avoid it. Now, this person will also need to make a choice to accept, reject, the offense, or to reject without offense.
Yeah. So what we're saying in effect here, and I'll go back to the scripture you quoted earlier on, about what Paul said, and this is just a personal relationship, if I may use the word I have with the word. Anytime there's an instruction to do something, what it then tells me is that I would naturally and easily want to do that. Because if it was a naturally easy thing to do, then there's no need to tell me to do it.
I mean, just like when God told Joshua, be bold and be courageous, that meant Joshua was going to face situations that would make him bold.
So if Paul says we've got to think, which is an action word, think only on things that are true, pure, just, lovely, that means I wouldn't tend to do that, especially when I feel offense.
And it's easier to, like you said earlier on, it's easier to take offense than to actually pull back and begin to think, begin to reorientate one's mind
Yeah.
on what on the way forward from the moment of being accosted with those words or the actions
So in
from the other
effect,
person. Yeah.
that's right. So in effect, what we're saying is offense will happen if we allow it to take root and
100%.
take over.
Yeah.
We then have to put in the effort. It's not something that would come automatically. Otherwise, the ball wouldn't tell you to do it or to act against it. So it's one thing we must remember, that offense is not something that would just easily and naturally come. We have to put in the effort. We've talked about how to identify, how to make changes, how to prevent it from growing, all that kind of stuff. Those are the ways in which we can manage offense. So as always, we thank you for regularly inviting us into your homes and to be part of your marriage journey.
Yeah.
And we also appreciate your feedback by email at MXperience@lidiosantos.com. Remember, we have mentioned it a few moments ago, all our previous episodes are available at our YouTube channel at MXperience. And if you're listening to this on a Monday, remember there is a replay on Wednesday.
Yeah.
So thank you so much once again, and looking forward to
Next week.
spending time with you next week.
And we'll just continue the same conversation around offense, because there's still quite a bit to talk about. Thank you always for having us with you week after week. God bless you. Have a wonderful week this week.
And don't get offended.
Bye for now.
Join Ayokunle and Boside again next week on The Marriage Experience as they bring God's truth to help you build your marriage God's way. Till then, remember, marriage is God's idea and it is a good thing.
The marriage experience ordained by you.